I woke up on Tuesday morning to find my living room furniture arranged in a completely different configuration than when I went to bed, and my first coherent thought was that I must be losing my mind. The couch that had been against the north wall now sat perpendicular to the window. My coffee table had migrated to the opposite corner. The armchair I inherited from my grandmother faced the wrong direction, positioned at an awkward angle that made no functional sense whatsoever. Even my bookshelf had been moved, leaving rectangular dust outlines on the hardwood floor like crime scene tape marking where my belongings used to be. I stood in the doorway of my bedroom, still in my boxers and t-shirt, blinking at the chaos. My brain struggled to process what I was seeing. I lived alone in this townhouse in Scottsdale, Arizona. The doors had been locked. The windows were secure. Nothing appeared stolen or damaged, just inexplicably rearranged as if some deranged interior decorator had broken in during the night with very specific but terrible ideas about feng shui. Then I remembered the smart lock. I had installed a Nest smart lock on my front door 3 months ago, partly for convenience and partly because the Sunrise Vista Homeowners Association had been getting increasingly aggressive about unannounced property inspections. The lock logged every single entry and exit, time-stamped and recorded. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and pulled up the app with trembling fingers. The log loaded slowly, each second feeling like an eternity. When the data finally appeared, my stomach dropped. Entry recorded at 4:17 a.m. Access code, master override. Someone had used a master key to enter my home while I slept, at 4 in the morning. And then they had rearranged my furniture. I scrolled through the previous entries, my confusion morphing into cold anger. There were 3 other unauthorized entries over the past 2 weeks, all between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., all using the same master override code. I had been dead asleep during each intrusion, completely unaware that someone had been creeping through my home like some kind of demented Goldilocks. My hands shook as I checked the rest of my townhouse. Nothing else seemed disturbed. My bedroom was untouched. The kitchen looked normal. The bathroom was exactly as I left it. Only the living room had been violated, rearranged according to someone else's bizarre vision. I knew exactly who had done this. Brenda Hutchinson, the president of the Sunrise Vista HOA, had been making my life miserable since I moved into the development 8 months ago. She was 52 years old with a blonde bob cut that looked like it required daily maintenance, and an attitude that suggested she believed the entire neighborhood existed solely for her to manage and criticize. She wore pastel cardigans over white blouses and spoke in a perpetually condescending tone that made even simple greetings sound like personal attacks. Our relationship had started poorly and deteriorated from there. Within my first week, she had cited me for leaving my trash cans visible from the street 15 minutes past the designated collection time. A month later, she complained that my front door wreath was not in accordance with the community aesthetic guidelines because it contained unapproved colors. She had objected to my car being parked in my own driveway overnight, insisted that my mailbox needed repainting despite being brand new, and sent me a formal violation notice because my porch light was the wrong shade of white. But this was different. This was not a petty citation or a ridiculous fine. This was breaking and entering. This was trespassing. This was a crime. I threw on jeans and a shirt, grabbed my phone, and stormed out of my townhouse. The morning air was already warm, promising another scorching Arizona day. The development looked pristine as always, with its uniform beige and tan townhouses, meticulously maintained landscaping, and streets so clean they could have been featured in a suburban planning magazine. Everything about Sunrise Vista screamed manufactured perfection, and Brenda Hutchinson appointed herself the high priestess of that perfection. Her townhouse was 6 units down from mine, distinguished by an elaborate garden of succulents arranged in geometric patterns, and a doormat that read "Bless this organized home" in embroidered script. I pounded on her door hard enough to rattle the frame. She answered after a moment, already fully dressed despite the early hour, wearing a lavender cardigan and khaki pants. Her makeup was perfect. Her expression shifted from surprise to practiced pleasantness. "Marcus, good morning," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "This is quite early for a social call. Is something wrong? You were in my house last night," I said, not bothering with pleasantries. "At 4 in the morning, you used a master key." Her eyes widened in an unconvincing imitation of shock. "I have no idea what you are talking about." My smart lock logged the entry. "Master override code at 4:17 a.m. and you rearranged all my furniture." Something flickered across her face, too quick to identify. Annoyance, satisfaction. She adjusted her posture, straightening her spine and lifting her chin. "As HOA president, I have the right to conduct property inspections to ensure compliance with community standards. At 4 in the morning, while I am sleeping, and moving my furniture around. Your living room arrangement was not in compliance with the approved floor plan submitted with your purchase agreement," Brenda said, her tone shifting to bureaucratic formality. "The HOA bylaws clearly state that interior layouts must match submitted documentation." I was simply correcting a violation. I stared at her, momentarily speechless. "You broke into my home in the middle of the night to rearrange my furniture because it didn't match some diagram from 8 months ago." "I did not break in. I used authorized HOA access. There is a difference." "That is insane. That is literally insane. You cannot just enter someone's home whenever you want." Brenda crossed her arms. "The bylaws you signed when you purchased your property grant the HOA the right to access units for inspection and remediation purposes. Perhaps you should have read the documents more carefully before signing. No bylaw gives you the right to commit burglary. It is not burglary if I have authorization, and I suggest you watch your tone, Marcus. Making threats against HOA board members is also a violation, one that carries significant fines." My anger was reaching dangerous levels. I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples. "Put my furniture back the way it was. Your furniture is now arranged in compliance with community standards. I expect it to remain that way. Additionally, you will receive a formal citation in the mail regarding this morning's aggressive behavior and verbal harassment." She started to close the door. "Have a pleasant day." I put my hand on the door, stopping it from closing. "Brenda, I am serious. You cannot do this. Remove your hand from my door, or I will call the police and report you for threatening behavior." We locked eyes for a long moment. I could see the absolute certainty in her gaze, the unwavering belief that she was right and I was wrong, that her authority was absolute within these 27 acres of manufactured suburban paradise. I removed my hand. She closed the door. I stood on her porch, breathing hard, trying to regain control of my emotions. Threatening her would accomplish nothing except giving her more ammunition. I needed to be smart about this. I needed evidence, documentation, and probably a lawyer. I walked back to my townhouse and immediately called the Scottsdale Police Department non-emergency line. A dispatcher answered on the third ring. "Scottsdale Police, how can I help you?" "I need to report a breaking and entering. Someone entered my home without permission early this morning and moved my furniture around." "Is the intruder still in your home?" "No, but I know who it was. My HOA president used a master key to get in at 4 a.m. My smart lock recorded everything." There was a pause. "Your HOA president?" "Yes, she has been conducting unauthorized inspections. This is the 4th time she has entered my home without permission." "Sir, if she has a master key provided as part of your homeowners association agreement that may be considered authorized access, you would need to review your HOA bylaws." "She rearranged my furniture while I was sleeping. That cannot be legal." Another pause. "That is definitely unusual. Let me get some information from you and we will send an officer to take a report." I provided my details and address. The dispatcher said an officer would arrive within an hour. I spent the waiting time photographing everything in my living room, documenting the new furniture arrangement and the dust outlines showing the original positions. I took screenshots of all the smart lock entries. I dug out my copy of the HOA bylaws, a 97-page document that I had admittedly only skimmed when I bought the place. Officer Patricia Chen arrived 45 minutes later, a compact woman in her mid-30s with observant eyes and a professional demeanor. I invited her inside and showed her the rearranged living room, explaining the situation. She examined the smart lock logs on my phone, taking notes. This definitely shows unauthorized entries. The master key override suggests she has some kind of access, but entering occupied premises at 4 in the morning goes beyond reasonable inspection practices. She claims the HOA bylaws give her the right to do this. Do they? I handed her the bylaw document, open to the section on property access. Officer Chen read through it carefully. This grants the HOA right of access for inspections and emergency repairs, she said, but it specifies reasonable notice and appropriate hours except in emergencies. 4 a.m. is not appropriate hours and there was clearly no emergency. This could qualify as criminal trespassing. Relief washed over me. So you can arrest her. I can take a report and file charges. The prosecutor will decide whether to pursue them. But honestly, given the civil nature of HOA disputes, they will probably recommend you handle this through civil court. That said, I am going to go talk to Miss Hutchinson right now and make it clear that she cannot keep doing this. We walked together to Brenda's townhouse. Officer Chen knocked, and Brenda answered with a startled expression that quickly shifted to composed concern. "Officer, is something wrong? Miss Hutchinson, I am here regarding a report from Marcus Davidson about unauthorized entry into his home." I already explained to Marcus that those entries were authorized HOA inspections. Officer Chen's expression remained neutral but firm. The HOA bylaws require reasonable notice and appropriate timing. Entering an occupied home at 4 in the morning does not meet either standard. Mr. Davidson has smart lock logs documenting multiple unauthorized entries. If this continues, you will face criminal trespassing charges. Brenda's pleasant facade cracked slightly. I am simply doing my job as HOA president. This community has standards. Your job does not include entering homes in the middle of the night. If you genuinely need to inspect a property, you provide written notice during daylight hours and preferably when the resident is present. Do you understand? This is ridiculous. The HOA has always had access rights. Miss Hutchinson, do you understand what I just told you? A long pause. Yes, good. I am filing a report documenting this incident. If Mr. Davidson reports any additional unauthorized entries, you will be arrested and charged with criminal trespassing. Am I clear? Crystal clear, officer. Brenda's voice had gone icy. Officer Chen turned to me. Change your locks if you want extra security. The HOA cannot require you to provide them with keys to occupied residences. That is Arizona law. She will probably fine me for changing locks. Then you challenge the fine through proper legal channels. But she cannot enter your home without permission, period. If she tries, call 911 immediately. Brenda was staring daggers at both of us but said nothing more. Officer Chen and I walked back to my townhouse, where she provided me with a case number and advised me to document everything going forward. HOA disputes can get nasty, she said. Keep records of all communications, all violations she tries to claim, everything. If she retaliates against you for this report, that is another crime. Do not hesitate to call us. After she left, I sat in my weirdly arranged living room and tried to process everything. The rational part of my brain said to just move the furniture back and move on with my life. But the angry part, the violated part, wanted justice. Brenda had crossed a line that went far beyond petty HOA tyranny. She had invaded my private space repeatedly, violated my sense of security in my own home, and showed absolutely no remorse. I was not going to let this go. I spent the rest of the morning researching Arizona HOA laws and attorney options. I found a law firm in Phoenix called Sanderson and Associates that specialized in homeowner association disputes. Their website featured several case studies of HOA overreach, including one where an HOA president had been successfully sued for harassment. I called and explained my situation to a paralegal who scheduled me for a consultation the following day. Then I moved all my furniture back to where it belonged. It took 2 hours of sweating and struggling with the heavy pieces, but I was determined to erase every trace of Brenda's intrusion. When I finished, my living room looked like my living room again. I took photos documenting the restoration. Around noon, I heard a knock at my door. I checked the peephole and saw Brenda standing there holding a clipboard. My jaw clenched. I seriously considered not answering, but curiosity won out. I opened the door but did not invite her in. "Marcus, I am here to conduct a follow-up inspection," she said in her most officious tone. "No, excuse me. You are not entering my home. Officer Chen made that very clear." The officer was misinformed about HOA authority. "I have consulted with our HOA attorney and I am within my rights to conduct this inspection." "Then your attorney is as delusional as you are. Get off my porch." Brenda's face flushed red. "You are in violation of multiple community standards, and if you do not allow this inspection, the fines will increase exponentially." "Fine me. Sue me. I do not care. You are not coming into my home." "You moved the furniture back, didn't you?" she said, her eyes narrowing. "I specifically arranged it in compliance with approved standards, and you deliberately violated those standards. You broke into my house and moved my stuff. That is not an inspection. That is psychotic behavior. I am issuing you a citation for non-compliance with approved interior layout, hostile behavior toward HOA officials, and failure to cooperate with mandatory inspections. The combined fines total $8,500. I almost laughed. $8,500 for arranging my own furniture in my own home. You are absolutely insane. The fines are outlined in Section 12 of the bylaws. Payment is due within 30 days, or a lien will be placed on your property. She made a note on her clipboard with exaggerated precision. You are also hereby notified that you are banned from attending the next HOA board meeting due to this morning's threatening and aggressive behavior. I am going to sue you, I said calmly. Personally. Not just the HOA, but you specifically, for harassment, trespassing, invasion of privacy, and emotional distress. Threats of litigation against HOA officials are also a violation. That is another $1,500. She smiled, a thin, satisfied expression. Have a wonderful day, Marcus. She turned and walked away, her posture radiating smug satisfaction. I closed the door and leaned against it, my hands shaking with rage. $8,500 for arranging my own furniture in my own living room. The sheer absurdity would have been funny if it were not so infuriating. I called the law firm back and asked to speak to an attorney immediately. They connected me with David Sanderson himself, the senior partner. I explained the escalating situation, including the massive fine Brenda had just assessed. That fine is completely unenforceable, David said after listening to everything. No HOA bylaw can legally impose penalties for interior decorating choices in occupied residences. They can regulate exteriors, common areas, things that affect property values or community aesthetics. But your living room, that is protected private space. She is way out of line. She keeps claiming the bylaws give her authority. Can you email me a copy of your bylaws and the citation she just gave you? Yes, absolutely. Do that now. I will review them this afternoon. Based on what you have told me, you have a very strong case for harassment and illegal trespassing. The smart lock logs are excellent evidence. We can potentially file both criminal complaints and a civil suit. What about the fine? Ignore it. Do not pay a cent. If they try to place a lien on your property, we will fight it. No judge is going to uphold an $8,000 fine for furniture arrangement. That is absurd on its face. I felt some of my anxiety ease. Having a lawyer confirm that I was not crazy, that Brenda really was as far out of bounds as I thought, helped enormously. What do I do if she tries to enter my home again? Call the police immediately, file charges every single time, build a pattern of harassment. Also, I strongly recommend installing interior cameras, at least in the living room. If she somehow gets in again, you will have video evidence. She will probably fine me for the cameras. Let her. Every ridiculous fine, every petty citation, every abuse of authority strengthens your case. Document everything. Save every email, every letter, every interaction. We are going to bury her in her own paperwork. After the call, I felt simultaneously better and worse. Better because I had professional legal help. Worse because I realized this was going to be a prolonged battle. Brenda was not going to back down easily. She had tasted power in her little kingdom and clearly believed she was untouchable. I spent the afternoon installing 2 interior cameras, one covering the living room and one facing the front door. Both connected to my phone and recorded to cloud storage. If Brenda wanted evidence, I would give her evidence. The citation arrived in my mailbox that evening, an official-looking document on Sunrise Vista HOA letterhead. It listed my violations in bureaucratic detail: Violation 47B, non-compliance with approved interior layout specifications. Fine, $5,000, Violation 22C, hostile and threatening behavior toward HOA officials. Fine, $2,500, Violation 31A, failure to cooperate with mandatory property inspection. Fine, $1,000, total amount due $8,500. Payment due by April 15, 2026. The document included a footer noting that failure to pay would result in additional late fees of $500 per week and potential foreclosure proceedings. I photographed the citation and emailed it to David Sanderson along with my complete HOA bylaws. He responded within an hour. This is one of the most egregious HOA overreaches I have seen in 15 years of practice. We are filing suit first thing Monday morning. Do not respond to this citation at all. Let them make the next move. That evening, I barely slept. Every sound made me jolt awake, convinced Brenda was creeping through my home again. I checked the smart lock logs obsessively. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my bedroom, and my heart nearly exploded before I realized it was just the townhouse's old pipes settling. Wednesday morning, I dragged myself out of bed exhausted and checked my phone. No unauthorized entries. The cameras showed nothing but empty rooms. I felt simultaneously relieved and disappointed. Part of me wanted Brenda to try again so I would have even more evidence. I made coffee and was scrolling through emails when I heard a knock. I checked my phone's camera feed and saw 2 people I did not recognize standing at my door. A middle-aged man in a polo shirt and a younger woman with a tablet. I answered cautiously. "Marcus Davidson?" the man asked. "Yes." "I am Greg Thornton, Vice President of the Sunrise Vista HOA Board. This is Jennifer, our compliance inspector. We are here to conduct a full property inspection." "No," I said simply. "This is not optional. The HOA has received multiple reports of violations and we are required to investigate. The only reports are from Brenda Hutchinson, who is currently under police investigation for illegally entering my home. You are not coming in." Jennifer spoke up, her voice apologetic. "Sir, I understand there is some dispute with the HOA president, but I am just doing my job. This inspection is standard procedure. Standard procedure is providing written notice at least 48 hours in advance, which you did not do. Come back with proper notice and I will consider it." Greg's friendly demeanor evaporated. "You are making this much harder than it needs to be. If you refuse inspection, we are authorized to assess automatic fines and violations. Then assess them. I have a lawyer now and he is very interested in how this HOA operates. I would be careful about adding more evidence to our harassment case. Greg and Jennifer exchanged glances. "We are simply following procedure," Greg said stiffly. "You will receive official documentation of today's refused inspection and associated penalties. Have a good day." They left, and I immediately called David Sanderson to report the incident. He sounded delighted. "They are panicking," he said. "Brenda probably convinced the board to back her up, but now they are all exposing themselves to liability. This is perfect. Keep refusing entry without proper notice. Make them document every petty retaliation. We are going to have an airtight case. How long until we can file suit?" "I am drafting the complaint right now. We will file Monday morning in Maricopa County Superior Court. We are suing Brenda Hutchinson personally for trespassing, harassment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We are also suing the HOA itself for enabling her behavior and for improper enforcement of unenforceable bylaws. I am confident we can get an injunction preventing any further inspections or citations while the case proceeds. Will that make this stop? It should force them to back down significantly. HOAs hate legal scrutiny because their overreach becomes very obvious very quickly. Most settle once they realize how much trouble they are in." That afternoon, I received an email from the HOA with a PDF attachment labeled Refused Inspection Citation. They were fining me $3,000 for denying access to compliance inspectors. I forwarded it to David without comment. His response: "Beautiful, keep them coming." Thursday passed quietly. I worked from home, my eyes constantly flicking to the camera feeds on my phone. No one approached my door, no unauthorized entries. The silence felt ominous, like the calm before a storm. Friday morning, I woke to find an envelope shoved under my front door. Inside was a handwritten note on floral stationery. "Marcus, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I would like to apologize for any misunderstanding and discuss how we can resolve this situation amicably. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Sunrise Cafe? I genuinely want to make things right. Brenda." I read the note 3 times, analyzing every word. The sudden shift from aggressive fines to conciliatory coffee invitations set off every alarm bell in my head. This was either a genuine attempt at peace or, more likely, a trap. I photographed the note and texted it to David. He called me immediately. "Do not meet with her alone," he said firmly. "This is either an attempt to get you to say something she can use against you, or she is trying to manipulate you into dropping the complaint. If you want to meet with her, I will come with you." "Is that necessary? Marcus, this woman broke into your house at 4 in the morning to rearrange your furniture and then fined you $8,000 for putting it back. She is either deeply unstable or deeply malicious. Either way, you do not meet with her without a witness." He had a point. "Okay, what should I do?" Text her back, say you are willing to meet but only with your attorney present. See how she responds. I did not have Brenda's phone number, so I wrote a note and slipped it under her door. "Brenda, I am willing to meet, but my attorney will be present. Let me know if that works for you. Marcus." 2 hours later, she responded via email, "That will not be necessary." I was hoping we could have a casual, friendly conversation without lawyers complicating things. "If you are not interested in resolving this peacefully, I suppose we will see each other in court." David's response when I showed him. Classic manipulation tactic. "She's trying to make you feel like you are being unreasonable. Ignore her. We file Monday." The weekend crawled by. I barely left my townhouse, ordering food delivery and obsessively checking my security feeds. Saturday evening, I noticed unusual activity in the parking lot. Brenda was talking to several neighbors, gesturing animatedly, clearly campaigning. I could not hear what she was saying, but I could imagine. I was probably being painted as the difficult resident, the troublemaker who would not cooperate with reasonable community standards. Sunday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera and saw my next-door neighbor, an older man named Robert who I had spoken to occasionally in passing. I opened the door. "Hey Marcus, do you have a minute?" Robert asked, looking uncomfortable. Sure, what is up? I just wanted to give you a heads up. Brenda has been going around to everyone telling them you are causing problems for the HOA and trying to sue the community. She is asking people to sign a petition to support the board against your harassment. My stomach sank. She is claiming I am harassing her. That is what she said. She made it sound like you have been threatening her and refusing reasonable inspections. A lot of people signed because, nobody wants HOA drama, but I thought you should know what she is saying. Robert, she broke into my house at 4 in the morning and rearranged my furniture. She has been illegally entering my home for weeks. I have police reports and smart lock logs proving everything. His eyes widened. Seriously, completely seriously. She claims the HOA gave her the right to do it, but the police said it is criminal trespassing. I have a lawyer now because she fined me $8,000 for moving my own furniture back. That is insane. Tell me about it. Robert shook his head. I had no idea. She made it sound like you were just being difficult about some minor violations. I did not sign her petition, by the way. I do not like getting involved in this stuff. I appreciate you telling me. Can I ask what other people are saying? Honestly, most people do not really care. You know how it is with HOAs. People just want to be left alone, but Brenda is very convincing when she wants to be. She has convinced at least 10 or 12 people that you are the problem. After Robert left, I felt sick. Brenda was not just fighting me legally. She was waging a social war, poisoning my relationships with neighbors, turning the community against me. It was a smart move from a tactical standpoint. Even if I won in court, I would still have to live here surrounded by people who thought I was the bad guy. I called David and explained the situation. He listened quietly. This is witness tampering and defamation, he said when I finished. She is intentionally spreading false information to interfere with potential witnesses and to damage your reputation. We can add that to the complaint. Do you have any proof of what she is saying? Just Robert's account. That is enough to start. I will draft an addendum to the filing. The judge is going to love this. She is digging herself deeper with every move. Monday morning, David filed the lawsuit. I got the notification via email around 11. The complaint was 47 pages long and meticulously detailed every violation, every unauthorized entry, every ridiculous fine. It cited specific Arizona statutes on trespassing, privacy rights, and HOA limitations. It demanded compensatory damages, punitive damages, and a permanent injunction preventing Brenda from entering my property or retaliating against me. The lawsuit named both Brenda Hutchinson personally and the Sunrise Vista HOA as defendants. David had included the petition campaign in an amended count of defamation and harassment. Now we wait, David said when we spoke that afternoon. They have to be served with the complaint, and then they have 30 days to respond. Typically, we will hear from their attorney much sooner, probably trying to negotiate a settlement. What are the chances they settle? High. This case is a nightmare for them. The smart lock logs alone prove illegal entry. The furniture rearrangement makes her look unhinged. The massive fines for interior decorating are clearly unenforceable. They are going to want this to go away quietly. What if they do not settle? Then we go to trial and we win, but it will take longer and cost everyone more money. Most HOAs are not that stupid. Tuesday afternoon, Brenda was served with the lawsuit. I know because she came storming to my door 20 minutes later waving the papers like a weapon. You are suing me, she shrieked through the door. I watched her on my camera feed but did not open it. This is outrageous. I was doing my job. Your job does not include breaking and entering, I called back. Talk to your lawyer, Brenda. You are trying to destroy this community. Everything I have built. You built a dictatorship. I am just defending myself. She pounded on the door. This lawsuit is frivolous harassment. I am going to countersue you for malicious prosecution. Good luck with that. Get off my porch. She continued shouting for another minute before apparently realizing I was not going to engage. I watched her storm back to her townhouse, and then immediately called the non-emergency police line to report the incident. A different officer came out, took my statement, and went to speak with Brenda about violating the no-contact implications of an active lawsuit. Wednesday morning, I received an email from an attorney named Patricia Holbrook, representing both Brenda Hutchinson and the Sunrise Vista HOA. The email was coldly professional. "Mr. Davidson, I represent Miss Hutchinson and the Sunrise Vista HOA in the matter you recently filed. We believe this lawsuit is without merit and constitutes harassment against HOA officials performing their duties. However, in the interest of resolving this matter efficiently, we are willing to discuss settlement options. Please have your attorney contact me to schedule a conference." David's response when I forwarded it: "They are scared. That is good. Let me handle all communication from here on. Do not respond to anything they send you directly." The next 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. I worked from home, avoided my neighbors, and obsessively checked my security feeds. The unauthorized entries stopped completely. No one from the HOA approached my door. I received no new citations or fines. David was in regular communication with Patricia Holbrook, the HOA's attorney. According to him, the negotiations were not going well. They want to dismiss everything in exchange for dropping all the fines, he told me in a phone call. Basically, everyone walks away and pretends nothing happened. Absolutely not, I said immediately. She broke into my house multiple times. She needs to face consequences. That is what I told them. I said we want a formal apology, compensation for emotional distress, your legal fees covered, and a permanent restraining order preventing Brenda from coming within 50 feet of your property. They are balking at everything except dropping the fines. What about the criminal trespassing charges? That is separate from the civil case. I have been in touch with the prosecutor's office. They are considering filing charges, but they are slow. Government always is. In early April, something shifted. I was working at my laptop when my phone buzzed with a news alert. I glanced at it absently and then froze. The headline read, "Scottsdale HOA President Arrested for Home Invasion and Stalking." I opened the article with shaking hands. The story detailed how Brenda Hutchinson, president of the Sunrise Vista HOA, had been arrested after an investigation revealed she had been illegally entering multiple residents' homes over the past 18 months. According to the article, I was not her only victim. 3 other homeowners had come forward after learning about my lawsuit, reporting similar experiences of unauthorized entries, moved belongings, and retaliatory fines. One resident, a single mother named Jessica Torres, reported that Brenda had entered her home and removed items she deemed inappropriate, including a beer sign in the garage and a decorative garden gnome. Another resident, elderly Theodore Chang, said Brenda had rearranged his medication cabinet because the labels were visible and unsightly. The article quoted Scottsdale Police Detective Michael Rodriguez. This goes far beyond HOA enforcement. We are looking at multiple counts of criminal trespassing, burglary, and stalking. Ms. Hutchinson used her position to systematically violate residents' privacy and security. This is a serious abuse of authority. I sat back in my chair, stunned. I had assumed I was alone in this, that Brenda had singled me out for some reason. But she had been doing this to multiple people for over a year, and no one had reported it because they assumed the HOA had the right. My phone rang. "David, did you see the news?" he asked. "Just read it." This changes everything. The prosecutor filed multiple felony charges this morning. Brenda is looking at serious prison time if convicted, and our civil case just became a slam dunk. What about the other board members? They had to know something was happening. That is what the police are investigating. If they knowingly enabled her behavior, they could face charges too. At minimum, they are going to be liable in the civil suit. The next few days were a media circus. Local news crews showed up at Sunrise Vista, interviewing residents and showing footage of Brenda being led out of her townhouse in handcuffs. My doorbell rang constantly with reporters wanting interviews. I declined them all on David's advice. The HOA held an emergency board meeting and voted to remove Brenda as president. Greg Thornton, the vice president who had come to my door with the compliance inspector, assumed temporary leadership. He sent an email to all residents apologizing for the situation and promising a full review of HOA procedures. I received a personal email from Greg. "Marcus, I owe you a sincere apology. I believed Brenda when she said you were being difficult and I did not question her methods. I should have. What she did was wrong, and the board takes full responsibility for not providing proper oversight. We would like to meet with you and your attorney to discuss how we can make this right." David and I met with Greg and 2 other board members the following week at a neutral conference room David rented. Greg looked exhausted, his earlier smugness completely gone. "We are prepared to offer a comprehensive settlement," Greg began, sliding a document across the table. "All fines dropped, naturally. We will pay your legal fees in full. We are offering $50,000 in compensation for the distress and violation you experienced. And we will implement new policies requiring written notice for all inspections, with residents present, during reasonable daylight hours. No board member will have master key access to occupied units going forward." David reviewed the document carefully. "What about the other victims?" "We are making similar offers to Jessica Torres and Theodore Chang. Mr. Chang has already accepted. Miss Torres is still considering." "And what about Brenda's criminal case?" "That is out of our hands. The HOA is not involved in the criminal proceedings. We just want to resolve the civil liability." David looked at me. We had discussed settlement possibilities extensively. While part of me wanted to drag this out, to make them suffer as I had suffered, the practical reality was that the criminal case against Brenda would provide the accountability I wanted. The civil settlement would compensate me and ensure real policy changes. "I want $60,000, I said. "And a formal written apology from the board to be posted on the HOA website and distributed to all residents. I want everyone to know what happened and that it was wrong." Greg winced but nodded. "I can agree to that. The board will vote to approve, but I do not anticipate any objections." "One more thing," David added. "Marcus wants the right to attend all board meetings and to have input on any new policies regarding property access and enforcement, essentially a voice in preventing this from happening to anyone else." "That seems reasonable," Greg said. We shook hands. The settlement was finalized 2 weeks later. I received a check for $60,000 and a formal letter of apology signed by all remaining board members. The letter was posted prominently on the HOA website and mailed to every resident. It detailed Brenda's unauthorized entries, acknowledged the board's failure to provide oversight, and outlined the new policies protecting resident privacy. Brenda's criminal trial occurred in August. David kept me updated throughout the process. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: smart lock logs from my home and the others, security camera footage, testimony from all the victims, and even photographs Brenda had taken inside our homes to document violations. The most damning evidence came from Brenda's own records. She had kept meticulous notes of every inspection, every violation, every correction she made. She genuinely believed she was doing the right thing, that her authority as HOA president gave her unlimited access to enforce her vision of community perfection. A psychiatrist testified that Brenda exhibited symptoms of obsessive-compulsive disorder and severe control issues, but was competent to stand trial. Her defense attorney tried to argue that she had misunderstood the scope of her authority, that it was a civil matter rather than criminal. The jury did not buy it. Brenda Hutchinson was convicted on 4 counts of criminal trespassing, 3 counts of burglary, and 2 counts of stalking. The judge sentenced her to 3 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay restitution to all victims and permanently banned from serving in any HOA leadership position. I attended the sentencing hearing. Brenda looked smaller somehow, diminished without her pastel cardigans and absolute certainty. She made a brief statement expressing regret for her actions and hoping the community could heal. I did not believe her remorse was genuine, but it did not matter anymore. Justice had been served. After the trial, life at Sunrise Vista slowly returned to normal. Greg Thornton proved to be a reasonable HOA president, focused on actual community issues like landscaping maintenance and pool repairs, rather than micromanaging residents' private lives. The new inspection policies were strictly followed. I never had another unauthorized entry. Jessica Torres and I became friends, bonding over our shared trauma. She had settled with the HOA as well and used some of her compensation to install an elaborate security system. We occasionally joked darkly about starting a support group for Brenda's victims. Theodore Chang sadly passed away the following winter. His family told me that the stress of Brenda's violations had significantly impacted his health. At his funeral, I spoke with his daughter about potentially pursuing additional legal action, but she decided she just wanted closure and peace. I used my settlement money wisely. Part of it went to upgrading my home security beyond what was probably necessary, but the peace of mind was worth it. I also bought a new couch, symbolically erasing the last trace of Brenda's forced rearrangement. The rest went into savings. The HOA experience changed me in subtle ways. I became more active in community affairs, attending every board meeting to ensure transparency and accountability. I advocated for clearer bylaws and stronger protections for homeowner privacy. I made it my mission to ensure no one else would experience what I had gone through. Some neighbors still viewed me with suspicion, believing the rumors Brenda had spread before her arrest. Others thanked me for exposing her behavior and forcing change. Most people just wanted to avoid drama and pretended nothing had happened. I learned that suburban communities are complicated ecosystems of social dynamics and willful ignorance. The smart lock that had captured evidence of Brenda's crimes remained on my front door, a constant reminder that documentation and technology can protect us from abuse of authority. I checked the logs less frequently as time passed, but I never stopped checking entirely. Trust, once broken, is difficult to fully restore. I eventually sold the townhouse and moved to a single-family home in Tempe with no HOA. The freedom of being able to paint my front door whatever color I wanted, to arrange my furniture however I pleased, to exist in my space without fear of judgment or intrusion felt almost decadent. I appreciated the mundane autonomy that most people take for granted. On the anniversary of Brenda's arrest, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Patricia Holbrook, the attorney who had represented Brenda during the settlement negotiations. She had left HOA law entirely and was now working for a nonprofit advocating for HOA reform legislation. She thanked me for my role in exposing systemic abuses and said my case had been instrumental in pushing for new state laws limiting HOA authority. Arizona eventually passed the Homeowner Privacy Protection Act in 2027, largely inspired by Brenda's crimes. The law explicitly prohibited HOA entry into occupied residences without consent, except in documented emergencies. It required written notice for all inspections with minimum notice periods. It capped fines for interior violations and created an easy appeals process. It held board members personally liable for privacy violations. I testified before the state legislature during the drafting process, sharing my experience of waking up to find my furniture rearranged and the violation that accompanied that discovery. My testimony was emotional but controlled. I wanted lawmakers to understand that HOAs, when unchecked, could become instruments of profound personal violation disguised as community management. The law passed with bipartisan support. Governor Katie Hobbs signed it in a ceremony that I attended. Several other victims of HOA abuse were present, their stories echoing mine with depressing similarity. We had all experienced the unique powerlessness of having our homes invaded by authorities we thought we had to obey. Looking back, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had not installed that smart lock. Would I have ever known Brenda was entering my home? Would I have just accepted the strange furniture arrangements as my own forgetfulness? Would she have escalated further? The counterfactual possibilities haunted me occasionally late at night. I also wondered about Brenda herself. What drove someone to such extremes? Was it really just control issues and OCD, or was there something deeper? Did she genuinely believe she was helping, improving, perfecting? Or did she simply enjoy the power, the secret access, the godlike authority over her little kingdom? I never got satisfactory answers to those questions. Brenda never truly explained her motivations beyond surface-level apologies. The psychiatric evaluation during her trial suggested pathology, but did not provide real insight into her mindset. She remained, in many ways, a mystery, a cautionary tale about unchecked authority and suburban tyranny. The furniture I had arranged so carefully that Brenda had rearranged without permission, that I had restored in defiant rage, sat in my new living room in temp. The couch, the coffee table, the inherited armchair all occupied positions I had chosen freely, without fear of violation or correction. Sometimes I moved them just because I could, exercising my autonomy in small, symbolic ways. The trauma faded but never completely disappeared. I remained hypervigilant about privacy and security. I researched every organization before granting them any authority over my life. I read contracts thoroughly. I trusted but verified constantly. Some might call it paranoia, I called it learned wisdom. My career benefited unexpectedly from the ordeal. As a software developer, I had always been technically proficient but professionally invisible. The media attention from Brenda's case raised my profile. I started receiving speaking invitations about smart home security and digital privacy. I consulted with security companies on developing better logging systems for access control. I turned my victimization into expertise. I also developed a side project, a free app that helped homeowners document HOA violations and abuses. The app provided templates for complaint letters, tracked communication with HOA boards, stored photographic evidence, and even connected users with attorneys specializing in HOA law. It grew more popular than I ever anticipated, with thousands of downloads and countless stories of people using it to fight back against overreach. The app attracted attention from consumer advocacy groups and even a few venture capital firms interested in the HOA reform space. I kept it free and ad-free, funded by donations and my own money. It was never about profit. It was about preventing others from experiencing what I had experienced, about empowering homeowners against systems designed to intimidate them into compliance. Years passed. Brenda completed her prison sentence and disappeared from public life. I heard through community gossip that she moved to a different state, possibly Colorado, and was working in retail. She was prohibited from HOA involvement as a condition of her probation. I hoped she had learned something, changed somehow, but I had no way to know. Jessica Torres moved away from Sunrise Vista as well, settling in Gilbert with her daughter. We stayed in touch via social media, occasionally meeting for coffee to reminisce and marvel at how much our lives had changed. She went back to school and became a paralegal, partly inspired by our legal battle. She wanted to help people navigate systems that seemed designed to crush individual agency. Theodore Chang's daughter sent me a card every Christmas, thanking me for exposing Brenda before her father's death. She said knowing that justice had been served provided her family with some measure of peace. I kept those cards in a folder, reminders that speaking up mattered even when it felt difficult and isolating. The Sunrise Vista HOA underwent significant turnover in leadership. Greg Thornton served 2 years as president before stepping down, exhausted by the constant scrutiny and reform efforts. The new leadership was younger, more collaborative, less interested in enforcement and more focused on community building. They organized social events, neighborhood cleanups, kid-friendly activities. The culture shifted gradually from authoritarianism to cooperation. I occasionally drove past my old townhouse, curious about who lived there now and whether they knew its history. The exterior looked the same, maintained to HOA standards that were now reasonable rather than oppressive. I wondered if the current residents ever thought about the woman who had been arrested for breaking into that very home, or if the story had faded into forgotten community lore. My life continued in ways both ordinary and transformed. I dated, worked, traveled, pursued hobbies. I bought a dog, a golden retriever named Bailey who greeted me enthusiastically every single day without judgment or hidden agendas. I learned to cook properly instead of relying on delivery. I joined a recreational soccer league and tore my ACL, requiring surgery and physical therapy. Normal life stuff, but the experience with Brenda remained a defining chapter, a before and after moment that shaped my worldview. I became someone who questioned authority, who demanded transparency, who refused to accept that rules were inherently legitimate simply because someone in a position of power declared them so. I learned that documentation and evidence were weapons against abuse, that speaking up was necessary even when terrifying, that justice was possible but required persistent effort. I sometimes gave talks at community centers and homeowner meetings about HOA rights and privacy protections. I shared my story not for sympathy but as education, warning people about the potential for abuse in systems that seemed benign on the surface. Many audience members had their own HOA horror stories, usually less extreme than mine but traumatic nonetheless. The shared experiences created solidarity and motivated collective action. The legislative reforms continued beyond the initial Privacy Protection Act. Additional laws addressed HOA financial transparency, limited foreclosure authority, required mediation before legal action, and established oversight mechanisms. Arizona became a leader in HOA reform, and other states began copying our legislative framework. My small contribution to that larger movement provided purpose and meaning to what had been a purely traumatic experience. I never regretted fighting back against Brenda. Even in my darkest moments during the legal battle, when I questioned whether it was worth the stress and expense and social isolation, I knew that allowing her behavior to continue unchallenged would have been worse. Some principles matter more than convenience or comfort. Privacy is one of them. The sanctity of home is another. The living room furniture in my temp house remained exactly where I wanted it, a daily affirmation of autonomy and freedom. The smart lock on my door logged only my own entries and the occasional guest. My interior cameras showed nothing but my dog napping on the couch and me walking from room to room in my own private space, unobserved and unjudged. Sometimes late at night, I still checked those camera feeds more often than necessary, a habit born from trauma that I had learned to accept rather than eliminate. I would scroll through the day's recordings, seeing nothing but ordinary domestic life, and feel profound gratitude for the boring normalcy of it all. No one had entered uninvited. No one had rearranged my belongings according to their vision of perfection. I was alone in my space by choice, not by violation. The story of the HOA Karen who used a master key to rearrange my furniture at 4 in the morning became something I shared carefully and selectively. It was too bizarre for casual conversation, too intense for light social interaction. But when appropriate, when someone complained about their own HOA troubles or expressed frustration with petty authority, I would share selected details. The reactions were always similar: shock, disbelief, and then anger on my behalf. Those conversations reinforced for me how unusual my situation had been, how far outside normal HOA dysfunction it fell. Most HOA disputes involved lawn maintenance or paint colors or parking regulations. Mine involved criminal home invasion and obsessive control behavior that crossed every reasonable boundary. I was simultaneously unlucky to have experienced it, and lucky to have had the resources and documentation to fight back effectively. The $60,000 settlement had seemed like a significant amount when I received it, but over time, I realized no amount of money could truly compensate for the violation of having someone creep through my home while I slept, touching my belongings, imposing their will on my private space. The money provided practical relief and symbolic validation, but the psychological impact lingered in ways that defied monetary calculation. Therapy helped. I started seeing a counselor about 6 months after Brenda's arrest, initially resistant to the idea but eventually recognizing its necessity. We worked through the violation and powerlessness, the anger and hypervigilance, the difficulty trusting people and systems. My therapist specialized in trauma and helped me understand that my reactions were normal responses to abnormal circumstances. That healing did not mean forgetting, but rather integrating the experience into a coherent life narrative. I learned that trauma responses are not linear, that progress happens in fits and starts with setbacks and breakthroughs. I learned that healing requires both processing the past and actively building a different future. I learned that I was stronger than I thought, but also more vulnerable, that both things could be simultaneously true without contradiction. The anniversary of waking up to rearranged furniture always hit me harder than I anticipated. No matter how much time passed, no matter how much I healed, that particular morning remained vivid in my memory. The confusion and disorientation, the slowly dawning horror as I realized someone had been in my home, the violation that felt almost physical despite nothing being stolen or damaged. Those feelings returned every year, uninvited but expected, requiring conscious management and self-compassion. I marked those anniversaries by doing something affirming and empowering. Sometimes I rearranged my furniture deliberately, reclaiming the act as my choice. Sometimes I bought something new for my home, celebrating my authority over my space. Sometimes I just sat quietly, acknowledging the pain and the progress, the damage and the resilience that followed. Brenda Hutchinson remained a figure in my life even in her absence, a symbol of everything that could go wrong when authority met obsession. I did not think about her daily or even weekly, but she occupied a permanent space in my consciousness, a reminder that threats could come from unexpected places, that tyranny wore many faces, that vigilance was the price of safety. I wondered occasionally if she thought about me, about all of us whose lives she invaded and disrupted. Did she feel genuine remorse in her private moments, or did she still believe she had been right? Did prison change her, or did she simply learn to hide her controlling impulses better? I would never know, and perhaps that was for the best. Some questions do not have answers that provide closure. The Sunrise Vista community eventually faded from the news cycle, replaced by other scandals and stories. Life moved on for everyone involved. The townhouses remained, the HOA continued with reformed policies, new residents moved in unaware of the history. The physical space persisted while the trauma dissipated, which felt somehow appropriate. Places outlast their stories. I stayed connected to the broader HOA reform movement, contributing to online forums and advocacy groups. My story became a case study cited in legal arguments and legislative testimony. It illustrated the worst-case scenario, the nightmare that justified protective regulations. I was simultaneously proud of that impact and tired of being defined by my victimization. The balance between owning my experience and moving beyond it remained delicate. I wanted to help others without remaining stuck in my own trauma. I wanted to advocate for change without letting Brenda Hutchinson continue to occupy space in my emotional life. I wanted justice and healing, accountability and peace. Those desires sometimes conflicted, requiring constant negotiation and adjustment. My relationships improved as I healed. The hypervigilance and trust issues that initially colored all my interactions gradually softened. I learned to let people in without immediately fearing violation or betrayal. I built friendships based on mutual respect and genuine connection. I even started a serious romantic relationship with someone who understood my history and gave me space to heal at my own pace. She asked once why I kept the furniture from the townhouse if it carried such painful associations. I explained that keeping it was an act of reclamation, proof that Brenda had not won, that I controlled my space and my belongings and my life. The furniture itself was innocent. The violation came from Brenda's actions, not the physical objects. Throwing it away would have felt like letting her dictate my choices, even in her absence. The smart lock logs from those early morning intrusions remained saved on my phone, backed up in multiple locations. I probably did not need to keep them years after the trial concluded, but I could not bring myself to delete them. They were evidence, proof, validation that I had not imagined or exaggerated what happened. They anchored my memory in verifiable fact when doubt occasionally crept in. Looking at those logs years later, the timestamps still shocked me. 4:17 in the morning, 3:42, 5:03. The violation happened repeatedly while I slept, oblivious and vulnerable. The premeditation required for those entries, the deliberate choice to invade occupied homes in the dead of night, spoke to pathology beyond simple control issues. Brenda had not stumbled into wrongdoing. She had systematically planned and executed it. The criminal justice system had worked in my case, slowly and imperfectly but ultimately effectively. Brenda faced consequences. The civil system compensated victims. The legislative system implemented reforms. Not every story of abuse and overreach ended with such clear resolution. I was privileged in ways I recognized and appreciated. I had resources for lawyers, technology that documented violations, a support system that believed me, and a legal system that took my complaints seriously. Others facing similar situations might not have those advantages. That awareness drove my continued advocacy. The app I developed, the speeches I gave, the testimony I provided all aimed to level the playing field slightly, to give other victims tools and knowledge that increased their chances of justice. I could not fix the entire broken system of HOA governance, but I could contribute to incremental improvements. The dog, Bailey, provided daily grounding in present reality. His uncomplicated affection and simple needs kept me connected to the moment rather than lost in past trauma or future anxiety. Walking him through the neighborhood, I practiced being present, noticing my surroundings, engaging with neighbors in casual conversation that had nothing to do with HOAs or legal battles or privacy violations. He was therapy in golden retriever form. I adopted him 6 months after moving to Temp, initially hesitant about the responsibility but ultimately recognizing the need for connection and purpose beyond work and advocacy. Bailey demanded nothing except food, walks, and attention, all things I could provide without fear of judgment or invasion. His presence in my home felt completely different from Brenda's intrusions, obviously, but the contrast was still striking. Wanted versus unwanted, invited versus imposed, love versus control. The Temp neighborhood I moved to had no HOA, which meant dealing with occasional frustrations like a neighbor who never trimmed his lawn or another who painted his house an aggressively bright purple. But those minor irritations felt liberating compared to the oppressive uniformity and constant surveillance of Sunrise Vista. I would take chaotic freedom over sterile control every single time. I made peace with imperfection in ways I had not before the Brenda experience. Life was messy and complicated and often unfair, but it was also beautiful and meaningful and worth protecting. Fighting for my right to arrange my own furniture in my own home had been about more than furniture. It had been about asserting my humanity against systems designed to reduce people to compliant units in a manufactured community. The case files sat in a box in my closet, hundreds of pages of legal documents and evidence and correspondence. I looked through them occasionally, usually on anniversaries or when helping someone else navigate their own HOA dispute. The paperwork represented thousands of hours of stress and effort, but also ultimate victory. Brenda had tried to control my space and failed. The system had tried to intimidate me into compliance and failed. I had fought back and won. That victory meant something beyond personal vindication. It contributed to systemic change that protected others. The laws passed in Arizona influenced legislation in other states. The precedents set in my case strengthened future cases. The visibility of Brenda's crimes educated the public about HOA abuse. My private trauma became public good, which provided meaning without erasing pain. I finished my last cup of coffee in my temp living room, Bailey snoring softly on the couch I had arranged exactly where I wanted it. Morning sunlight streamed through windows I could cover or uncover without fear of violation notices. My home was mine in every meaningful sense, sanctuary and fortress both, a space I controlled absolutely within its walls. The journey from that confused morning in Scottsdale to this peaceful morning in Temp had been longer and harder than I could have imagined, but I had traveled it and arrived somewhere better. Brenda Hutchinson had tried to impose her will on my life and failed completely. The furniture she rearranged sat restored and reclaimed. The authority she abused had been stripped away. The community she controlled had reformed. Justice is rarely perfect or complete, but sometimes it is sufficient. Sometimes the bad guys face consequences. Sometimes the system works. Sometimes fighting back matters. My story was one of those sometimes, and I held onto that reality on difficult days when the world seemed unjust and fighting seemed futile. The smart lock on my front door logged only authorized entries now, years of data showing nothing but my own coming and going and occasional invited guests. No more 4 a.m. intrusions. No more master key overrides. No more violations of the most basic human right to security in one's own home. The logs represented normalcy reclaimed, autonomy restored, freedom protected. I closed the app and set my phone down, finished my coffee and started my day. Bailey needed walking. Work projects needed attention. Life continued in its ordinary, extraordinary way, shaped by the past but not imprisoned by it, informed by trauma but not defined by it, aware of darkness but choosing light. The furniture stayed exactly where I put it, and that simple fact still felt like victory.